Howdy, welcome. We are in the middle of a series right now called A Man After God's Own Heart, the life of David in the Bible. And we started this 7 days ago. Today would be day number 7. And we started in First Samuel chapter number 16. Now we're already up to chapter 21. And if you want to turn your Bibles there with me, you can follow along as I read. And pretty unusual goings on here in First Samuel 21. Samuel met David in a city called Ramah, and he sent David on his way from there because Saul was on his tail. And then we read yesterday in part 6 how David reconnected with Jonathan. Jonathan promised David that his dad wasn't after him, but after finding out by threat of his own life, Saul, the father of Jonathan, throws a javelin at him. He shoots 3 arrows and sends David on his way to hide. And so that's where we find David now, 1 Samuel 21. He is on the run from Saul. Then came David to Nob, to Ahimelech, the priest. And Ahimelech was afraid at the meeting of David, and said unto him, Why art thou alone, and no man with thee? So Ahimelech has a little bit of discernment. David is a warrior. He's a soldier. He's one of Saul's greatest soldiers. And Ahimelech is struck. It struck him odd that David would show up here in Nob, especially alone. So he asks him, Why are you alone, and no one's with you? And David said unto Ahimelech the priest, The king hath commanded me a business, and hath said unto me, Let no man know anything of the business whereabout I send thee, and what I have commanded thee, and I have appointed my servants to such and such a place. So David makes up this story about Saul sending him on some business, but he can't tell anybody what it is. That's always something that's easy to go to when you don't have a story ready and made up to go. And he does say that he's got some men with him that are waiting for him at such and such a place. And then he asks him, Now therefore, what is under thine hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread in mine hand, or what there is present. He said, we need some food. 5 loaves would be fantastic, but if you don't have that, we'll take whatever you have. And the priest answered David and said, There is no common bread under mine hand. Meaning, we don't have any bread at the house or in the grocery store, but there is hallowed bread. So in the tabernacle or temple, you have the table of showbread. And so it has 12 loaves of bread on it. And he tells David, I don't have any regular bread, but I've got the hallowed bread, the bread on the table of showbread. If the young men have kept themselves at least from women. So the law said that in order to partake of this food, you had to have been 3 days clean, not having had relations. And so he offers the table of showbread bread to David and his men because they're hungry and they have need. And David answered the priest and said unto him, Of a truth, women have been kept from us about these 3 days since I came out. And the vessels of the young men are holy, and the bread is in a manner common, yea, though it were sanctified this day in the vessel. So David says, yeah, we have. We've kept ourselves pure the last 3 days, and in fact, because of that, that makes these men sanctified or holy, and so the bread is common bread for them to eat, though it were on the table of showbread. And Jesus brought this whole story up when he was teaching because the Pharisees were accusing him of breaking Old Testament law. And it was, I believe, the story of the disciples picking the corn on the Sabbath and eating it. And he said, Didn't David eat the bread that came off of the table of showbread? And what he was teaching the people was, the spirit of the law is more important than the letter of the law. And here you have men who are hungry and needing nourishment, and instead of refusing them when there is good food available, he tells them, David ate that food and he gave it to his men and they ate as well. And if we go back to when Jesus taught the Pharisees, he said, you guys pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, meaning of spices and herbs, but you omit the weightier matters of the law. justice, judgment, and mercy. And so when man has a need, that need usurps the letter of the law. And so the table of showbread bread was meant for the priest to consume, but because there is a need and there are hungry men, it can certainly be used to feed these men. And so David receives it. Verse 6, so the priest gave him hallowed bread. For there was no bread there but the showbread that was taken from before the Lord, to put hot bread in the day when it was taken away. Now, something to pay attention to here, because this is going to come up again. Now, a certain man of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before the Lord, and his name was Doeg, an Edomite, the chiefest of the herdmen that belonged to Saul. And then the story just goes on. But this is a little foreshadowing. Saul is after David, and one of Saul's men, Doeg, is here. He's his chief herdman, and he's going to see that David's here in Nob. So verse 8, David said unto Ahimelech, and is there not here under thine hand spear or sword? For I have neither brought my sword nor my weapons with me, because the king's business required haste. So David says now, his story is getting shakier and shakier, isn't it? And he says, hey, not only did we need some food, but we need some weapons here. I don't have a sword or a spear. Remember, Jonathan told David in chapter 20, make haste, get out now. And so David just left. And the priest said, and how is this for a noteworthy incident? The priest said, the sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom thou slewest in the valley of Elah, behold, it is here, wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If thou wilt take that, take it, for there is no other save that here. And David said, there is none like that, give it me. So David asked for a sword and shield, and ironically enough, the very sword that David took from Goliath and cut off his head is here in the temple in Nob, and so David takes that. He says, the only one we've got is Goliath. He says, well, there's no one better than that, so let's take it. And David arose and fled that day for fear of Saul, and went to Achish, king of Gath. Now remember, Goliath was from Gath. So when David is in Gath, he's in Philistine territory. So now he is known. They know him. In fact, he's walking in there with the sword of the mighty great Goliath, the Philistine that he killed. So how's he going to play this out? How is he going to be accepted by these people? The servants of Achish said unto him, is not this David the king of the land? Notice that they already attribute leadership to David and not Saul. Did they not sing one to another of him in dances, saying, Saul hath slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s? And David laid up these words in his heart, and was sore afraid of Achish the king of Gath, because David's reputation is that of a mighty man of war, and now he's in enemy territory. He has to play this very wisely. Verse 13, and he changed his behavior before them, and feigned or pretended himself mad or crazy in their hands, and scrabbled on the doors of the gate, and let his spittle fall down upon his beard. So David pretends to be mentally ill. Scrabbled on the doors of the gate. I don't know exactly what that word scrabbled means. I guess I could look it up real quick and find out, if you don't mind delaying. It might be an old English word that... okay, here we go. To scratch or grope around with one's fingers. To scratch at something with claws. So, scrabbled on the doors. What's he doing? He's using his fingers, and he's grabbing or scratching on the doors here and of the gate, and then he lets his spittle fall down upon his beard. And so he's doing his best to pretend to be insane. And verse 14, then said Achish unto his servants, Lo, you see the man is mad. Wherefore then have you brought him to me? Why would you bring me this crazy guy? Have I need of madmen? I love that question. Anytime I read it, I crack up. The king says, do I need any more crazy people? Have I need of madmen that ye have brought this fellow to play the madman in my presence? Shall this fellow come into my house? And that's where the story leaves off, and we're going to leave it off there too. And we'll come back to it tomorrow and figure out how this all plays out for David. But David is desperate. He goes to the land of the enemy out of desperation. He's using the sword of Goliath out of desperation. He brings it into the land of the enemy out of desperation. Now he's pretending that he's mentally ill so that they might show him some mercy. They bring him to Achish, and Achish says, I don't need any more crazy people. And I don't know about you. I don't need crazy people in my life either. So there we leave it. The man after God's own heart, the life of David in the Bible, on the run from Saul. Don't forget Doeg the Edomite there. He's going to show back up again. All right, thanks so much for watching. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.